Hey, sis. One thing that women often don't realize that they need along the dating journey is a lot of grace and generosity. Grace and generosity for themselves, and grace and generosity for the men that they're talking to. I'm going to first share with you what I believe grace and generosity to yourself looks like. Oftentimes on the dating journey, we really don't have our own back. And we're often looking at the situation through a negative filter. And when I was single, one of the things that I really did well was look at things through optimal angles. I was always giving myself credit and patting myself on the back, laughing off setbacks, laughing off rejections, not even seeing them as rejections. I would have a positive attitude. And that grace and generosity that I gave myself really comforted me through the dating process while I was single. I'll give you two examples. There was one time when I saw this cute guy. I was close by my mom's house. We were outside in her front parking area, and there were different neighbors around. And one of her neighbors was particularly good looking. And I was trying to talk to him and, get a little bit of attention from him. And then we all separated and went back to our houses. I decided to write a little note saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed talking to you. Would you like to go grab a cup of coffee?" And I took that letter and I put it in front of his door under a rug so that he would see it when he came out. And then a few hours later, I saw a note on my mom's front door, and I looked at it and he said, "Hey, it was nice meeting you and thank you for the offer, but I have a girlfriend. All the best." And a lot of people I see would see that as some kind of terrible rejection and make it mean that they'll never find their person and that the world is just not a good place to be in. That's not what I did. I literally thought it was funny. I literally thought I was brave and bold for doing it. And I laughed it off and kept going with my day. And even looking back on it, it wasn't a negative moment for me. It was actually a positive moment where I looked at myself and said, "Look at you go. You are so brave." And I was proud of myself. This is practicing grace and generosity to yourself and having your own back. Never beating yourself up or looking down on yourself or broadcasting your life, forecasting your life to be negative and unhappy. No, have your own back. Support yourself, believe in yourself, and believe in this process. When you have grace and generosity to yourself, you're going to be doing things that build yourself up. You're going to be practicing self-care and practicing self-love and doing things that bring you pleasure. Like when you are going out to meet new people, you're going to be doing things that you love. You're going to be doing things that you enjoy and that bring you joy and happiness. And, not doing things like just because you have to and as though it's a drudgery or a chore. Do the things that brighten your soul. And then when you do them, give yourself credit. One of the hard things about being single and wanting to get married is that we have this goal that's kind of like an on or an off switch. And so it's off, 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 then on when you meet the guy and you get married. But for all up leading up to that, it's off. And what you've got to learn how to do, and this is what I help my clients do, I help them celebrate along the way and change this binary process to I'm not with someone to I'm with someone to little series of celebrations, little series of acknowledgments. Like when you lose weight, you lose 2 pounds, you lose 3 pounds, you lose 1 pound again, you lose half a pound, and you kind of can celebrate along the way. You've got to learn how to make this journey be similar to that, where you're celebrating yourself and giving yourself credit and acknowledging the positive things that you're doing along the journey and telling yourself that these are the things that are going to get me married. These are the things that are going to get me married. Instead of telling yourself, oh, it's not going to work out. Don't do that to yourself. Give yourself grace and give yourself generosity. And then I want to tell you how to give grace and generosity to the guys that you're talking to. Remember that they don't have to be your future husband in order to be worthy of grace and generosity. They are people that the Lord created. They are humans. They are some of them that you're going to meet, your brothers in Christ. And you can enjoy being around them even if they don't turn into your future husband. They can be people that you have fondness for and feel positively towards, even if they don't ask you out on a date, um even if they don't become something more. They can still hold a special memory inside your heart. For instance, the guy that left that note on my door, I hold fondness for him. Like he was a pleasant bump in my journey in that he was kind to me when he left that note. And wasn't it fun that he didn't just ignore me? You see how I'm always looking for the positive angle, the optimal angle, the angle that will bring me the most joy, right? So when you're with men, I encourage you to practice true generosity instead of complaining, even to yourself. Don't even complain to yourself, but certainly don't complain to him. You know, when we're with a guy, like oftentimes we're like, well, he has to understand that this is what makes me happy, that he has to understand that this is what I need. And especially, I will say, even in marriage, what's more beautiful is when you accept someone for who they are. When you accept someone for what they're offering and for how they're loving you, and admit that they're doing the best they can. That they have no ill will towards you. They're not trying to hurt you. And acknowledging that, and accepting what they have to offer, and accepting what they're giving. That's what makes marriage the most beautiful. Believing in your partner, believing in the guy that you're talking to, and believing that he holds goodwill towards you instead of thinking that he holds ill will and is trying to hurt you. People try hard to make other people happy. They do. They do the best they can. They fall short. We've got to hold grace and generosity to them. And I find that a lot of times in the early part of a relationship, the early part of a relationship is very fragile. It's very tender, it's very tenuous, it's very tricky. It's a tricky thing you got to hold with kid gloves. So it's not the time to be laying on a bunch of requirements and standards and wishes, and you know that's the time to hold it tender and have a lot of acceptance and grace and generosity. I find that if we even complain a little bit, it can really, really throw a cold shower on the relationship, and kind of put a lot of pressure on it. So, what I find to be better is to save your complaints, to hold back your complaints, and to instead approach it with an open heart. It's okay, sure. Be very agreeable. It's one of the things that I don't hear spoken of a lot, and it's something that you might not think about. But the more no's and complaints you put on a relationship, both of you, both him and you, the more no's and complaints you put on the relationship, the more likely it is for the relationship to fail. So when people say, no, I can't make it, or, well, could we do this instead? Or, yeah, that wasn't really cool, or any kind of like negativity, it's like 100 pounds of sand on the chest of the relationship. So you may not have realized that, but this grace and generosity all throughout the dating process and leading into marriage is really powerful. It's one of the things that um, I have seen time and time again as a coach. The more often we say no or complain, the harder it is for the relationship to continue. And a lot of times when there's there's even a couple of no's and even a couple of complaints, the relationship kind of disintegrates. I notice it most when people say things like, no, I can't show up, or no, I'm busy. And, just a couple of no's, it's over. He's out. And it's because the momentum and the elasticity is gone, and there's just too much pressure. It's just too hard. It's too much stress. It's too hard for this to go. And it just never gets off the ground. So that's what I find, that the grace and generosity in a relationship and a conversation is incredibly vital. Save the complaints. Like, hold back on the complaints. Don't even complain to yourself. Instead, be grateful. Be, again, generous. Be appreciative. And that positivity is really going to create that place where both of you want to continue. Remember what I said before, in a couple of podcasts earlier, that you want to become the source of pleasure. And when someone says no a lot or complains, it's hard for you to feel pleasure. It's harder. So instead, be appreciative, be grateful, be positive. And that would make it more likely that this tenuous, beautiful relationship that you're starting is more likely to come off. All right, that's grace and generosity for yourself, grace and generosity for the guy that you're with. It's a beautiful thing. Let's get you married, sis.